Today, I'm chatting with MK Hennigan of In the Curious Kitchen, and it's such a great conversation about her business journey, which is really interesting, and how she has taken her family recipes and her family history and woven it into her brand and her product. And it's just a really inspiring conversation. We also talk about all the growth that she has had in her business, particularly on the wholesale side, in the last year and specifically the last 6 months after taking the Faire Bootcamp. So if you're interested in the Faire Bootcamp, I'd encourage you to listen till the end because she shares a lot of really great insights of what her experience was like before, during, and after going through that program. And it will really, I think, give you some insights into what that could do for your business as well. So let's get into it. I hope you enjoy the chat. Hey friend, quick question for you. Are you feeling stuck with how to get your brand to stand out on Faire? I'm asking you because as a buyer myself, I can tell you that there are just so many brands out there vying for the attention of these buyers, but I know that your brand has something so special and it needs to be seen. I put together a private podcast for you that goes deeper into what buyers are really looking for on the Faire platform and how you can stand out from the crowd to grow your wholesale business and really land those dream buyers. So if this resonates with you, head to the link in the show notes for instant access. MK, I am so excited and honored that you joined me today on the Buyer Side Chat. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. What a thrill. It is a pleasure to know you and work with you. So this is exciting.
Oh, thank you. I had this idea. I was like in the shower or something, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know what? It'd be really fun to have MK on because you have such a cool backstory and a really cool brand, and you're at such an exciting time in your brand growth. And we've been working together for a bit now. And so I was like, let's just come on and have a chat. So I'm excited to dive into it. We'll see where this convo takes us. So first, can you just tell people a little bit about In the Curious Kitchen and you and your background?
It is storied, that's for sure. I started In the Curious Kitchen in 2020 when I was downsized from my corporate job. And always an entrepreneur at heart, just had the spirit of one. In my old corporate jobs, I worked with independent and corporate buyers. And it was always my, I want to say duty. It was always in my heart to help serve them and help their business be as successful as they can. So when it was my turn, I decided to start selling products that spoke to my heart and that had a real story. And that were products that I pulled from family recipes. So my grandmother's pimento cheese was the first thing that came to mind. And to this day is the number 1 and 2, depending on what numbers you're looking at, product that we launched. I grew up in Kentucky, and so I still live here today. And I wanted to also tell the story of the rich history of Frankfort, Kentucky, where I grew up, and the bourbon industry. So all of that has intertwined into In the Curious Kitchen and what we're doing today.
I love it. I feel like you glossed over so many things. So I want to go back and I want to talk about there's a lot in your story. So I want to talk about what you did on the sales side, because this is something you and I have really like bonded on talking about. You're like, I've worked with buyers before, but now that I'm doing it for myself, it's just a different role to be in. So what did you do on that corporate side that had you really falling in love with working with buyers and brands?
So out of college, interior design degree, decided not to do the traditional route. I went to work in retail. So I did visual merchandising, which was just such a love. And it allowed me to explore design in a different way in the retail space, which it's always been near and dear to my heart. And from there, I went to work in management in a department store that we now call Macy's. Then it was Lazarus Department Store, regional part of the Atlanta part of Macy's. And from there, I found my way to Waterford Crystal. And at Waterford Crystal, I was the sales manager for this region that I live in. I covered a 5-state region, which included back to Macy's. So I was back calling on Macy's department store and some smaller department stores as well as independent stores, which I absolutely love to work with. And it took me to market. It took me to New York. It took me to Atlanta. It took me to, well, Vegas wasn't happening then, but we did go to Vegas for many other reasons. I also worked with the marketing team on special projects, which was so much fun. And they pulled me in because of my love for food and wine and entertaining. So we did some great projects at Food and Wine in Aspen. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I traveled with artisans from Waterford. We traveled all across the country and introducing the craft of crystal making to the customers. So we were able to share that bond with the customers and really engage them. I guess I would say the craftsmen at Waterford were the early influencers because it was really quite an amazing time to be at Waterford when those gentlemen could be face to face with the customer. And during the time when I was at Waterford, they also introduced a brand called Holiday Heirlooms, which are the glass blown ornaments that are made
we
in
have
Poland
a lot of those.
and Italy. Yeah. And so probably one of my greatest memories was traveling with, I'll never forget her name, Antonia. And she was an artisan from Italy, and she hand painted the ornaments on site as we engaged with customers. And she created some beautiful ornaments for my family, and that are still on my tree today.
Oh,
So
that's beautiful.
yeah, it's really wonderful. So at Waterford, I learned early on story and how heritage and story and taking care of customers and letting them in and pulling the curtain back was so important. From Waterford, I went to work for a brand called Mariposa, which is based in Massachusetts, but the product's made in Mexico, and they do some amazing artisan quality products for tabletop, and tabletop has just been a passion of mine, not just from my time at Waterford, but growing up with my mom and grandmothers. They always loved to set a beautiful table. We had the china, the crystal, the silver. As in the Southern household, that's not unusual, but I was just surrounded by it. So at Mariposa, I was able to take that same passion and love I had for tabletop into a more casual type of brand, such as Mariposa, but dealt with the corporate side of the business. So I've worked with corporate sales managers, and the biggest part was the travel industry. So the gifting industry. So they would have events, and they would gift their employees and their customers. So that's the part of the business I helped with. And then from there, I went to work for a Fortune 5 brand, Berkshire Hathaway, in a division called Larson Jewell, which was their picture frame molding business. And again, it's an artisanal brand, handcrafted, handmade by artisans throughout the whole globe. Lucky enough to travel to Europe to see how it was really made and see gold leafing being laid on picture frame molding. So I've had a very storied career, which takes me to where we are today.
Yeah. This is why I was like, you just glossed over some things. I know you've got some juice in that story that I want to hear about. And so I'm so glad you shared that. And I just learned things about you too just now. I mean, it's so cool. I just love hearing people's stories and how it all just kind of lays on top of one another and just builds and builds to the point of you have this brand now that is all about entertaining and coming into someone's home, and you're not selling tabletop, but you are talking about it because it's a really interesting part of your brand. And so I just love that story. It also just really warms my heart too. And I think I've shared this with you, but I grew up with my grandma, loved, similar to you. It was the china and the tablescapes, and she just loved that so much. And we had so much Waterford in our family that's now been passed down, and the ornaments. And so it just means, it's just such a storied brand. And I think that's a really great, anchor to your story of how all of that just continued on in the craftsmanship and how you now carry that forward. So when you were transitioning in 2020 to build out in the Curious Kitchen, what was that, you said you were let go from your corporate job. obviously you didn't just say, okay, I dream of Jeannie, but your arms, and all of a sudden, boom, you have this brand. What did that look like from transitioning? Had you kind of started thinking about it before that happened? Or was that really a transition period where you just were figuring it out?
Well, I knew I needed to monetize something. And whether originally the idea came in 2019, I wanted to start a blog because at the time everything was great, life was good, and we were just moving along. And I wanted to start a blog to tell the stories of my family and growing up in Kentucky and all the things. So in the Curious Kitchen, one day I was driving to Nashville went on a sales call, and I thought of the name and created the blog soon after on Squarespace. And then there we came, March of 2020 happened, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna change the name because I really loved it and thought long and hard about it, and it makes a lot of sense to who I am. So I did a little test with the Kentucky Derby and selling products to my neighbors for their at-home Kentucky Derby celebration because the Derby wasn't going to happen live, right? So I created some boxes that had pimento cheese in it. It had our beer cheese, which we have which is part of our product lineup, and some other little elements that really now today are part of our mint julep kit. So I tested it out, had a very, very, very limited quantity, put it out there on Facebook, and sold through it immediately. Everyone was so excited. They were excited to have food from my kitchen, which I was certainly thrilled about, but also to support someone doing something a little unique and a little different. So it was really at that time that I thought, okay, I've got these recipes that I have been tweaking and working on for quite a while. My grandmother didn't write down her recipe, but I tested it out and had the sign off from my dad, so I knew it was the right mix of all the ingredients. And then my mother had shared with me her beer cheese recipe and so on. So I started selling the products at our local farmers market, and that was really my lab to try out products. And coming from the background of a merchant and a heart of a merchant, I knew that I had to create a core line of products to help complement the main product, which was the pimento cheese. So that's when I started producing jams and mustards to see if they would all combine together and that the customers would enjoy them as a total package. And they did. And every product that I introduced, they loved. And then I thought about it. And as I mentioned, I grew up in Frankfort, Kentucky, which is the heart of bourbon country. And I knew I had to do something to pay homage to that. And that was when the idea of the boozy cherries came about. And so created something that lives completely on its own in a crazy little world. And I'll never forget the time when somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, do you have those boozy cherries?" And I thought at that point, when someone's asking for it in the product name that I just thought of, on a one crazy day, I thought, okay, I've got to trademark that. So that product alone has done some crazy numbers out there.
So you have boozy cherries trademarked?
Yes.
That is so cool. I didn't know that. I love that.
Oh yeah.
That's amazing.
Boozy cherries is trademarked, as well as just add bourbon. Trademarked.
I love it. I love that. It's so much fun to hear that evolution because you went from a period that probably felt really uncertain. I mean, I know it certainly felt uncertain for everybody globally, collectively, just with everything that was going on at that time period. But on top of it, losing your job, which I know so many people were facing that as well. But to take that and say, okay, what's something that I'm really passionate about? What's something I have a story, let me test it out and just see if people around me like it. Like so many brands start this way. You just test it out within your community and then you test it out at markets and then it just builds and builds. And you've been really smart about how you've approached it because you've thought about, okay, I need a core line and I need these products that are going to be kind of the mainstays. And you've also listened to what people are asking you for. And that is usually how you get a mainstay line. It's like, you don't just oftentimes have this amazing family recipe in your arsenal that you can just have that be your mainstay. But like, that's a really fortunate thing and also so amazing. I'm curious how, as you're thinking about this brand, and it's obviously been a part of the message the whole way through, but as you're at this scaling stage, because I'm kind of jumping ahead because I know kind of where you're at in your business, but you're at this scaling stage, how are you taking that messaging and thinking about how that's going to really take your business to the next level?
So I'm going through an exercise right now, and I'm really at the end of it with new packaging. So that packaging, it's going to tell the story of the brand within the packaging. So as the customer engages with the packaging, they're going to read some of that story, as well as some efforts that I'm putting out there on Pinterest and other platforms. To say this was positive from the beginning is true, but there was a lot of fire in my belly because of what happened to me. I was determined not to let somebody else manage my life anymore because I had given so much energy and dedication to that company, and not just the company that let me go, but companies prior to that. And I thought, I can't do this to myself and my family again. So that's where a lot of the fire in the belly came in. But never did I expect that my grandmother's recipe, something that we ate all the time and that I watched her make all the time, would have such an impact in my business. It was insane. But back to your question is how I'm taking the brand to the future. And part of that is packaging. Part of that is a new website and exploring wholesale because I have the background of wholesale. I was the salesperson selling someone else's product at wholesale. So I understood from a sales perspective what had to happen.
Yeah.
And discovered some amazing tools and people out there along the way to help make that happen. Yeah. So constantly iterating and thinking, and to say my mind turns off, it really does. But my goal along the way is to just make the brand a better brand and understand, and that not to be too precious to me, even though it is, to be able to listen and hear what people are saying and what the consumer is saying as well.
I think that that's a really good point. When you think about in the beginning, not everybody, most people start their brand for them or for, a need that's really close to their heart, or they're really good at something, or they have, something that it is a personal thing. And it's always personal, but you do have to, at a certain point, start to detach yourself a little bit from, I think you had said, being so precious and so like hanging on to it so tightly, and just allowing your customer to tell you where that story is gonna go, and allowing yourself to rethink it. You're so, what I like with working with you, one of the things I do so much is like you're always taking an objective look at your business, and you're like, this is good, but it could be better. And there's a fine line between that. Sometimes we do that and it's like, you're never satisfied, but you do it in a way that is really challenging your brand and your business to grow and be better and better. Cause that you're at that turning point of, I have this really great brand, to I have a brand that could be in so many states, and like it could be sold across the country, and it is, but it's like about to really explode. I can just feel it. And so I think it's a great entrepreneurial skill set that you have with that, being able to see that and have that vision. It's been really exciting working with you on that.
Thank you. Either an entrepreneur spirit or a little crazy. So the idea,
isn't that the same thing?
Well, yeah. I mean, who would be willing to take on all this risk and be up all night thinking about things and not getting sleep, but an entrepreneur. So that's really the idea behind the new packaging, is how can this brand look? How can it look elevated? How can it be giftable? How can it be for a corporate customer, right? As well as for a high-end boutique, or for a corporation to do like a gifting company. How can it be incorporated into different types of businesses? So that's really been the exercise of this new packaging, but still tell the story of where it all started, because
Yeah.
that will never leave. And people always ask me, what's the success? And I said, I think it's my grandmother and my mother and my grandmother's with me all the time, just cheering me on.
Hmm.
It was,
Yeah.
and I think you'll appreciate this. I was one time at one of my store when I was with Larson Joe at the time, and this gentleman walks in the store and he said, "There are people with you," and I'm like, what's that mean? He goes,
Oh.
"Oh, they're right here," and I'm like, "They're right where?" Like they're standing next to you, and they're gray. They're two gray-haired women, and I thought, "Oh my God,
Oh, I have full body
those are my
chills.
grandmothers." Yeah, it was
Yeah.
crazy. It was crazy. So from that point on, I thought, you know what? I'm gonna just take that as
Yeah.
my North Star and be like, all right, the girls are with me, and we're gonna move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. And you're honoring them and you're honoring your family legacy through this, which is just such a beautiful thing that I think is, not many people have, but I think what other people can gain from this conversation is like, okay, maybe you don't have your grandmother's recipe, or, that as your North Star, but like, what is it about your story that can be the through line with your messaging
Mhm.
and your branding and telling that story? There's so many things out there. It could be something so small. It doesn't have to be a huge thing, but it's how you tie it all together. And
Yeah.
you talk about, recipes and entertaining ideas and all of that just brings your brand really to life, which is just so fun to see and be a part of. What is something that is kind of I would say a challenge that has stood out for you that maybe was pivotal in your business or has caused you to, like, I don't know, go from one level to the next that maybe felt uncomfortable in the moment and maybe you're working through it now? I don't know.
Oh goodness, there's so many challenges that come along the way, and I think for me, it's not getting caught up in the small little things that are just little hurdles, right? That
Yeah.
come your way
Hmm.
as owning a business and going through this. For me, the biggest challenges are often me, right? And being
Yeah.
scared and fearful of the next big thing. So I've had some pretty amazing things happen over the last week or so, which you know about, and have happened honestly along the way. There's been some recognition. There was, you know, an article in Southern Living just from a small little conversation I had with somebody that put my product in the pages of one of the most renowned magazines in the country, and then some recognition from some other magazines. And as a person, I just let those things come and go, right? I don't take them as I deserve it. They're just part of it. But when I think back to it, it is the hard work that I put into it. And the winning the challenges that came my way, over the course of time, whether it's a frustration over a delivery or whatever it is, right? Those small little challenges, when you push through them and you work really hard, good things will come your way.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think it's so normal. I have experiences. I experience it all the time. I think most people do, especially if you have your own business, but that fear of growth can really be stifling and hold us back. And when you just have that perseverance and you push through it and just think, well, okay, if it's like, how good could it be? How good does it get to be? It's like you could stay as you are, or
Right.
you could just let it rip and see what happens. And pushing through the hard
Yeah.
times, there are good things that happen at the end. I know this is a funky year for a lot of people, and it's not the end. It's just potentially a bump in the road, and then you have these
Right.
things that happen on the other side of it, like what you're experiencing. You're seeing growth in the business, you're seeing visibility, and you're seeing that as a result of all the things you've been working towards, which is really exciting.
There's been some amazing growth, and I'm always going to be the person that pushes myself to put a goal in front of myself, but also have a stretch goal, and that just comes from my corporate background. We always had to put a
Yeah.
stretch goal
Oh
out
yeah.
there, and
People are probably like, oh, Kristen always talks about a stretch goal.
yeah,
I
no.
love a
I
stretch goal.
mean, I love a stretch goal. I'm always looking for it to exceed the stretch goal because we always are a little soft on ourselves. So the challenges of the retail market have been pretty significant. And as
Mhm.
people talk about it, I'm often a little bit more quiet because I've had some amazing growth. Last year, my business at wholesale was up 47%. And we're going to
Mhm.
hopefully talk about the why of that. Overall, I'm up 28% last year. And this year, my wholesale is growing again, and my overall business is growing again. It's, I'm so thankful, and I understand, and I know it's because there's a lot of people that are continuing to discover the brand, but I
Mhm.
also know the brand's really good. And I know
It is
that
really good.
the time and the energy that we put behind it
Mhm.
goes into the product. And you know,
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't stop, obviously, because there's big plans. There's big plans that were put, things that are in place that I hope this trajectory doesn't stop. But I am grateful for it, but there's been hard work to get us to where we are today.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't come overnight, and but having that, absolutely being in love with your brand. And sometimes we fall out of love with things, and it's not necessarily falling out of, it's like falling out of like with it. You're kind of like, ugh, I don't really want to deal with this again, or oh, this is feeling hard, or it's frustrating. But truly loving your brand, that shows and just kind of comes through in all that you do. So let's talk about your growth a
I
little
would
bit.
like to. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
No,
Because I
go
did
for it.
want
Go
to
for
say
it.
something about the challenges. And we've talked
Yeah.
about this. One of my biggest challenges is being able to bring to market new products because we make our products in-house. So
Mhm.
expanding the line is always a challenge. And we have some things out there, and you've helped me see through creating new products and bringing to market new products. And so that challenge is really me bringing those products to market when I know they can be easily done by just a few tweaks of something. But anyway, that's what I just wanted to mention.
Well, I mean, you're doing big things, like working with a co-packer and some of those things that are going to allow you to really see
Yes,
that growth and bring new products in. And sometimes that is the thing that needs to happen before it's like putting the cart before the horse sometimes. And so that's just, working with a mentor that can help you just get out of your own head. And, it's why I love doing this, because we can have those conversations and you can drop your vision on me, and then we can say, okay, what's stopping you, and let's talk about it, and then let's find a plan. Not saying I came to you and said you need a co-packer. You were already working on that, but it's like the conversation
right.
got you to say, okay, yes, this is actually needs to be my priority right now because it's preventing me from doing this and this.
Yes. And you were able to take all what was in my head and on that Google Doc and put it into goals that are achievable when they're looked at in the way that you have helped me approach them. So that has been something that not I just couldn't do. It was too much in my head. There was too many thoughts, too many ideas, too much noise in my own head. And like you said, I was in my own way to do
Yeah.
the things I needed to do. And I thought in reviewing the documents that you shared with me after you took my documents, I had a lot of goals for this year, and you said maybe that's too many goals, and I don't disagree.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is having somebody to look at what you're doing and say, hey, listen, this is great. You can do this still. Maybe not today, maybe not this year. It can still happen maybe next
Mhm.
year or maybe the year after. It doesn't have to happen today to make your business a success. So
Yeah. And
that is,
go ahead.
I was going to say I just so appreciate you looking at my business in such a thoughtful way and in a way that you understand who I am. Because when I came to you, I'm like, okay, this is going to probably be some therapy too. And you're like, girl, I'm all in. I'm like, I just needed somebody to say, am I listening here? Are these goals too lofty? And you're like, no, they're not too lofty. Maybe just not this year. And
Yeah.
I've learned over these last 4.5 years that a year goes by really quick.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Especially when you're in a product business, it's like boom, boom,
Yeah,
boom. And all of a sudden
yeah,
you're thinking about holiday again. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, I think most of us have a ton of goals and I'm sure everyone listening to this is like, I have a 2.5 mile long list of things I want to do, but you start to just get in your head about it. And so part of why I love doing this is because this is what I wish that I had. And it's something that I'm really good at helping other people with, but also have a hard time doing for myself because it's human nature. When you're a motivated person with a cool brand and all these ideas and opportunities coming at you, it's like, woo, what am I going to focus on? And sometimes it's just having an outside perspective come in and say, all right, what are the most important goals? And let's shift some things around. Or you need to hire, or you need to do these other things that are going to allow it to happen faster. So it's been really fun working with you on that. And I'm really happy to hear it's helping
But your perspective is so unique in the world that we live in, right? So you're coming from a buyer's perspective. I'm coming from a vendor perspective. And so what I always want to do is attract the buyer. So you're able to look into my business and say, okay, from a buyer's perspective and from your 15 plus, 20 plus years in the business, I look at this way. And I came from the business from the other side of the curtain, right? So us meeting in the middle and understanding and helping take the business to a different level I see it's a formula that is destined for success.
Oh, heck yes. It's like a little secret sauce. It's so much fun.
That's right.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's talk about business and how we really met. I want to take this back to last summer when you joined the Faire Bootcamp. And I'm just curious, like, what was going on in your business at the time when you found the Faire Bootcamp, and what had you start to consider that? Because I know from our conversations that has driven a lot of your wholesale growth with the work that you've put in on the Faire platform. And so I'd love to just hear kind of what was happening at that point in the business when you discovered me, when we found each other.
So I knew that I wanted to grow wholesale. I knew that was where I wanted to put some energy, a lot of energy. We have been attending consumer markets, and I love talking to the customer, but at the end of the day, that's not what I want to do 100%. So I knew I had to grow what I was doing on Faire. Faire is a platform that is, I think, pretty amazing. I mean, you can grow your business significantly on it, but I didn't understand the platform. And I knew I needed to find some expertise in that area. So I started searching on podcast, the Apple Store, I guess it is, and looking for Faire. And so Faire Bootcamp podcast came up during my search. And I consumed every single one of your podcasts. I continued to listen to them. And it was pretty early on in listening that I knew that you were really smart. And I knew that you were the type of person that I could trust in what you were saying because you'd been in the trenches. So we didn't work together as buyer and sales and marketing, but I worked with a lot of people like you. And so you understood the business, and you understood that I understood that what you were saying was legitimate, right? Because I've been in meetings with people such as you. And then so you introduced the Faire Bootcamp, and I thought, why wouldn't I? I mean, I'm already trusting this person to listen to their podcast and really take in what you were saying, and any tips or tricks that you would give along the way, I would implement. A little bit at a time. I did. No, I have a note. So I am my fulfillment center currently at this time. And so that's in the basement. And I have a notepad on my desk downstairs. And as I listen to podcasts, I'll take notes. And I had quite a bit of notes from listening to your podcast. And so you talked about the waiting list. I'm like, well, who doesn't want to get on a waiting list? I want on a waiting list. I want to know more. I want to understand as much as I can Faire, because I knew I wasn't using it to its full potential. And I knew there was a lot of things that I needed to do to help grow. So signed up for the Faire Bootcamp, started implementing right away your ideas and suggestions. And you offered a shop audit.
Mhm.
And that was an incredible value to me for you to have someone objectively looking at my shop. And I knew that I had to just take it all in. So most of the things you said, I knew, but I just didn't know how to
Mhm.
articulate it. And
Yep.
it was you coming in with that perspective and that eye of a buyer that I could see clearly what you were saying.
Yeah.
So implementing those changes and those ideas that we put out there that you put out there on Faire Bootcamp, I have to say was a huge contribution to my growth at 47% year over year.
That's
It was
amazing.
well, it was it's amazing that you offer such an honest approach to people because I don't think there's a lot out there that do. I think there's a lot that just give you a little bit and want you to come back for more.
Yeah.
But that's what, but that is what I appreciate in your approach is that you're all in. When you're with your boot camp group, you're all in. You're offering all kinds of insight and engaging with them individually and as a total group. So that's what I appreciate, and it works. It's not just a conversation. I mean, these are real tactical bits of information.
I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you for sharing that. That's like so, not only is it so heartwarming, but it just makes me feel really good to know that you feel like there is the legitimate value in there that
Oh, very much
I
so.
strive for, because I've bought courses too that are like, this is so much fluff. This is fluff. And that is like the farthest thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, there's gonna be too much in here. I maybe, so I'm really happy to hear that. I'm curious, like from your having gone through that, and if you remember, were there any insights or anything that you learned going through the boot camp that were kind of unlocks for you that had the biggest impact on that growth? Or was it just the culmination of things that you were doing? Because I know you really implemented you did a lot of
Yeah.
work. So I'm curious
So
about
for
that.
me, yeah, I think the biggest aha for me was talking in the product description,
Mm-hmm.
talking to the buyer as they're buying for their customer. Is to really
Mm-hmm.
it's not, I was talking about me,
Mm-hmm.
about my products and how it was all about me instead of turning the mirror on the customer. And I think that was so important as to how to write your product description so it's inviting and it's
Yeah.
talking about what that buyer is doing at that time in their season of buying. So for now, we're talking about, we're about to talk about summer, right? Summer
Mm-hmm.
entertaining. We're turning off the spring entertaining conversation and we're talking about summer buying and really understanding that buyer's calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So from my world and my perspective, it's 6 months out, right? From when I was at
Mm-hmm.
Water for Crystal. January, we're talking about Christmas. July, we're talking about Christmas. But I looked at bigger chunks of time in a calendar, but you were able to share smaller snippets of a calendar, of a buying calendar. And you mentioned this on, I think, your last podcast about SKUs. And there's oftentimes where a buyer will buy something that's just a higher end item just for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And you shared with us how to write that product description for that moment. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's not for a long game product, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's for a special moment. So looking at your product description, tweaking it, going back and looking at it again, and testing ideas and testing copy and how that's going to work with the buyer because you never know when you're going to hit the right one
Yeah.
on the nail on the head.
Yeah, oh, and that's the thing with Faire too. It's like you don't know who's coming to your page. So
Right.
testing it out and playing around with it and not setting it and forgetting it. I mean, you don't want to be in there every week or every month even having to touch your product descriptions, but
Right.
we do go through a lot of strategies around time of year. And that's why, breaking it down into a smaller chunk of time, breaking the calendar down into more minutia does help get that algorithm going. And, the more you're testing and trying things out, the more it'll hit. Whenever it hits, it really hits. What
Yeah.
was something that or maybe, I don't know. I'm curious if there was a breakthrough kind of moment where you're like, oh, I've been putting this work in on the Faire platform and like the gas is turned on. Like was there a moment when you had either like a big breakthrough or you just saw the business kind of taking off?
So the gas, the gas turned on. The engine started revving July, August.
Mm-hmm. So that would have
When
been
I
like,
started
yeah,
when I
like a
started
month
paying
after.
attention to it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a month into it. So it took some time for the algorithm to catch up to me and all that we had done, because you helped me. We took a deep dive into my
Mm-hmm.
shop, and it really showed. That was an aha moment for me, that if you're putting the right information in and you're describing and telling the buyers what they want, right? Because we need to tell them what they want, I think. Then the gas gets turned on, and like I said, I haven't stopped really. I mean, it's been a slow week or two, but otherwise I'm still up this year as well. So I'm seeing the momentum that happened during the summer continue to happen during the fall and winter. And I know that the buyers are buying in the summer, right, for their fall, and some of them have bought earlier on in the year. But being in gourmet foods, they're buying a little later, but
Mm-hmm.
they're coming back
Yeah.
week
Which
after
is,
week.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're
That's the
coming
exciting
back. New customers are coming in, and new customers are reordering, which is exciting. So
thing.
the turn is quick. The
Mm-hmm.
turn is really quick. And I have one particular customer that I ship pimento cheese to her every other week. And her orders keep getting bigger and bigger, which is amazing. So she's selling more, she's buying more, and she's also adding new products to her mix. And that's another thing I wanted to make mention, is that you talk about communicating with your buyer. Don't
Mm-hmm.
let just the order just sit there and let the order happen. Communicate with the buyer. Talk to
Mm-hmm.
them about, okay, you're buying this. Have you thought about this or this, and how these other items will complement the one thing that they purchased? And
Yeah.
so getting comfortable with communicating through the platform
Mm-hmm.
is something that I didn't do. I mean, I completely, literally ignored it, but
Yeah.
I've been doing more of that. And I know not every customer is going to communicate back, but when they do, I'm often surprised but thrilled.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like, I always like to say it's not just a fair course. That it's largely based on that, but it's also about how to build those relationships off the platform, how to use the platform as part of that relationship building,
Yes.
because that is what gets them coming back. That's what gets them to try you in the first place if they find you off the platform. And those things are what get the algorithm going, And so I'm glad that you brought up the communication piece of it is really paying off for you, because that shows the algorithm that buyers are interested in you because you're communicating. Check, that helps, right? That back and forth shows them that you're an engaged brand and you didn't just like set it and forget it. And it also shows the algorithm that customers buy from you and then come back again, and then buy from you and then come back again. and
Yeah.
and that
That's
tells
been
them, oh, this is a brand.
yeah, that's been such a thrill. And you also, a big part of what we talk about is also communicating off the brand, whether that's communicating with them through Instagram or however we want to communicate, or with an email or so forth and so on. But there's lots of ways to communicate with people, and we've got
Yeah.
to make sure that we're using all of our resources to do so. It is labor intensive and time intensive, but it's been well worth it. And you also talk about, what's the word I want to use? Burnout. Not to burn yourself out doing it,
Yeah.
but being thoughtful and having a system and a rhythm to it. And
Yeah.
that's very refreshing, because you can get caught up in an idea and just be so focused on one area of one thing, but to be able to create some space and energy around the idea too.
Yeah, it's all about balance. The elusive thing we're always trying to find is not burn yourself out. Have some balance. So my last question is, I'm just curious, if someone's listening to this and they're interested in the boot camp, what would you say to them?
Sign up, invest in yourself, and go through the course during the time frame of the boot camp. Ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and then go through it again. I mean, we have access to it, right? I just was looking at some printouts that I did of the engaging with buyers, right? And how to communicate with the buyer, and from some suggestions you gave us, and continue to look at it as a framework for your business, because you've really laid out a really wonderful framework for people to succeed, but you have to put in the work too. Yep. So you put in a lot of work on the front end, right? Creating this course. And if you're going to invest in it, invest your time and energy into it, because that I think it's part of the reason why my business has had success, is because I put in the work. And also understand that it's not going to happen overnight. It will slowly build. And when it starts to build and the momentum's there, you will see the results.
Yeah. And you don't have to wait that long. You don't have to wait that long.
Oh, no.
You know, it can happen pretty fast, but it's not going to happen that same day or maybe even the next week. But that's really the goal behind the boot camp, is that, we're doing this together, because a lot of times it's stuff that you just put off. It's also education around it. It's also getting that insight to the buyer, but it's really meant to be repeatable, and so that you can come back to it when you need to fine tune things. And it's really a framework that works. So I am just so grateful to you for putting and sharing this. It means so much. I know you're so busy, and it just means a lot that you took this time to come on here and chat, but also just to share your feedback around this, because it just really means so much. So I thank you.
Well, and I've said this to you, and I'll say it again. I've been in the business for many years, over 25 years, and you come across a lot of people, but you're really a smart person. And I don't trust a lot of people. I mean, I shouldn't say it. That doesn't sound. That doesn't sound great. But I know that what you offer is good information, great information, and that will get results. So that's very evident.
Thank you. You're the best.
Well, thank you
so much. Need to keep you around.
I'm not going anywhere.
So tell everybody how they can connect with you, shop in the Curious Kitchen, all the things. And I think you have a discount code for the listeners.
We do. And I'm not sure what we called it.
Chat 20.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. I'd love to offer listeners a discount code chat 20 to take 20% off our shop at inthecuriouskitchen.com. I would love to have you hang out with me on Instagram. That's at in the Curious Kitchen. And of course, sign up for a newsletter too. You're going to get another discount.
Yeah. I'll put all the links in the show notes and email it out so everybody can take advantage of that, because your line is just so good. So thank you for coming on and sharing all of your amazing insights. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Before you go, if you've been on Faire, but you're struggling to stand out or land consistent orders, you're not alone. I see and I hear this all the time. Amazing brands are getting lost in the crowd because they just don't know how to optimize their presence and get noticed. That's exactly why I'm hosting this brand new free live workshop, the Faire Success Blueprint, Stand Out and Sell More on Faire. In this workshop, I'm going to break down the biggest mistakes brands make on Faire, what buyers like myself are actually looking for, and the proven strategies to get your products noticed and sold. And honestly, this is not just theory. This is real, actionable strategies that have helped countless brands grow their wholesale business, both on and off the Faire platform. And the best part is you're going to walk away with a very clear understanding and a blueprint to start seeing results right away. There's going to be bonuses and a surprise giveaway for those that attend live. It's happening on April 28th. So you definitely don't want to miss this. So head to kristenfishercoaching.com/Faire Blueprint, or just click the link in the show notes below and grab your spot. I'll see you there.
Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. If you are loving the show, I would be so beyond grateful if you would rate and review the podcast and share it with one of your biz besties to help spread the word. I hope that you absolutely crush your sales this week. I'll be back to chat with you next Monday.